Right, yesterday we have finalized the session with this example. I will explain it again. The XPLC, that's about contract modification. The XPLC entered into contract to sell 100 units, 1 unit per $140. That is the original contract, entered to sell 100 unit at $140 per unit. They have already transferred 55 units of out of 100, that means they have to transfer further 45 units. At that moment they have modified the agreement by adding additional 20 units at a price of 100. That 100 price is a reduced price, but if that price is a standalone price, it is a separate contract, but here price reduced due to compensate the delayed delivery of that 55 units. The originally delivered 55 unit was delayed. Therefore, to compensate that delay, they have reduced price from 140 to 100 for this additional 20 units. According to the contract modification requirement, we can see easily their scope has increased by 20 units, right? The price also changed, but that price is not an standalone price because price connected with the delay happened in the original contract. Therefore, this cannot be considered as a separate contract. This should be accounted as part of the original contract without considering as a separate contract. The reason is the new price $100 offered for that additional 20 is not a standalone price. Standalone price means a price independent price from the original contract, but this 100 is not an independent price. Reason is they have reduced price to compensate the delay. Therefore, you have to add this 20 units to the original contract. Therefore, with this modification, they have to supply 45 plus 20, altogether 65 units. But price will change. The reason for the 45 unit price is 140, for the balance 20 unit price is 100. When it's taken to the same contract, we have to calculate the average price like this. Here 6,300, here 20 into 100, 2,000, therefore total would be, it should be corrected as 8,300, right? Then once you divide it by 65 unit, the average price per unit 129. Therefore, from the 56th unit you are going to deliver, already you delivered 55 units, you need to deliver further 65 units with additional 20, right? The average price would be 129.23 cents. The reason is this is not considered as a separate contract, since the 100 price, increased price, is not an independent price. Is that clear? Right. Then next example, contract modification. XPLC entered into a contract to construct a building for 1 million. XPLC determines that contract contains a single performance obligation satisfied over time. The obligation need to be satisfied not on a point, it should be satisfied over time. Yesterday we have discussed the satisfaction of obligation at a time, at a point, at the beginning or end of the period. But in this case, the performance obligation will be satisfied over time. Therefore, before discuss the question, we have to move into the standard to discuss, to see how performance obligation satisfied, right? Here satisfaction of performance obligation will occur when control transfer. We have discussed this point yesterday. Then obligation can be satisfied at a point or over time. Here they have mentioned in the paragraph 35, this obligation satisfied over time. Again, they have explained in paragraph 38, obligation satisfied in a point in time, on a point in time. This was discussed yesterday. At the beginning of the contract or at the end of the period, obligation will be satisfied, control will be transferred, no issue of that. But when the obligation satisfied over time, you don't have exact point. You have a period to recognize revenue. In such a situation, you need to recognize revenue based on the progress. Therefore, write down short note here with this topic. The revenue shall be recognized based on the progress. The revenue shall be recognized based on the progress. The how you can measure the progress has been explained in paragraph 41. Now I will repeat it. Performance obligation can be satisfied on a point or over period. How you can recognize revenue on a point we have discussed yesterday. It can be at the beginning or end of the period. It has been discussed yesterday. Now we are going to discuss how we can recognize revenue when obligation satisfied over period. When it is satisfied over period, you have to recognize the revenue based on the progress. How you can measure the progress? You can measure progress based on output method here, output method or input method, right? Output method or input method you can use to calculate the progress, right? How we can apply this output method and input method has been explained in paragraph 14 to B14 to B19, right? Therefore, let us see paragraph 14 to 19 to understand how we can calculate the progress. B14 to B19. These are the two methods as explained in paragraph 41. You can calculate the progress on output method or input method, right? B15 explain what is the output method, right? Output method recognize revenue on the basis of direct measurement of the value to the customer of the good or service transferred to date relative to the remaining good and service promised under the contract. For an example, assume I have contracted with you to deliver a lesson over 2-year period. That lesson included 10 chapters, same weight for each chapter. Our contract about to deliver 10 chapters to over 2 years period. All the 10 chapters have same weightage. At the end of the first year, I have completed 4 chapters out of 10. Therefore, I can say based on the output method, I have completed 40%. Is that clear? If you take Colombo Kandy highway, say they have to completed 100 miles. Out of this 100 miles, assume at the end of the period they have completed 35 miles. Therefore, they can say they have completed 35% of the project. Based on that percentage, you can recognize the revenue and the cost. That is the output method. Is that clear? This is the explanation of output method. You will calculate the percentage based on the good and services already transferred to the customer out of the total good and services you agree to transfer. That is the output method. Is that clear? Right. Then input method. Input method recognize revenue on the basis of entity's effort or input to the satisfaction of the performance obligation. What are the inputs? Labor, material, machine hours, labor hours. Those are the inputs. Based on the number of labor hours or machine hours or material kilograms, right, whatever, already incurred out of the total to be incurred, you will take a percentage. Assume to complete the project you require 100 labor hours. At the end of the reporting period, you already incurred 55 labor hours. Therefore, you can say based on the input method, we have completed 55% of the project. Is that clear? Or easy method, you can calculate the total cost, expected total cost. Then you can calculate easily how much the cost you incurred up to the reporting date. Therefore, the cost incurred will be divided by the total estimated cost to have a percentage. That is how input method can be used. Again, I will repeat. Revenue shall be recognized when you satisfy the performance obligation. That is, when you transfer the control. Control can be transferred on a point in time or over the period. Yesterday we have discussed how to recognize when the obligation satisfied on a point in time. Today I am telling you how revenue recognize when you transfer the control over period, not a point in time. When you transfer the control over period, you need to recognize revenue according to the progress, the percentage you completed of the obligation. That percentage can be calculated on output method or input method. Is that clear? Right. This example mentioned they have contracted to construct building for 1 million. Revenue will be recognized over the period. Therefore, you need to calculate the progress. XPLC uses cost incurred as a percentage of the total expected cost. What's that method of progress calculation? Input method. Cost incurred out of the total cost to be incurred. Transaction price 1 million, total expected cost 700,000. Sorry, 700,000 and 1 million. Price 1 million, cost is 700,000. XPLC has incurred 420,000 cost out of 700,000. Is that clear? 470,000 on this 700,000, 420,000 on this 700,000 as a percentage 60%. Is that clear? Therefore, according to the progress, you have completed 60% of the project. Therefore, you will recognize revenue 60% in your P&L and the respective cost. Therefore, for the period your profit will be 180,000. Is that clear? That's how you have to apply progress method. Example 2. The contract is modified. The same example. Contract is modified early in year 2. That is end of the first year. This is the first year income. Assume this is first year income and profit. Is that clear? At the end of the first year you completed 60%. Therefore, you recognize 60% of revenue and cost and profit for the first year. Clear? Now, end of the first year or early in the second year, contract was modified by change in the specification for location of the stairwells. The customer agreed to pay an extra $250,000 for the original price. Therefore, price will be 1.25 million from the second year onward. The modification resulting total price 1.25 million. You have extra cost due to the modification. Your extra cost will be 100,000. Therefore, your total new cost will be 800,000 because originally it was 700,000. XPLC evaluate the modification and conclude that remaining good and service to be provided using the modified contract are not distinct. Therefore, according to the modification you finalize, there is no distinct good or service or no standalone selling price. Therefore, you cannot consider this modification as a separate contract. You have to incorporate this additional price and cost into the original contract. XPLC accounts for the contract modification like this. Due to the new cost incurred, total cost will be new cost included, total cost is 800,000. Now 420,000 incurred at the end of the first year, 420,000 as a percentage it will be reduced from 60 to 52.5. Clear? Therefore, revenue shall be recognized under the new rate 656,250. Got it? Cost again 420,000 because it is the actually incurred cost. Clear? If you consider new revenue and new cost, you will have a new profit. Or if you consider new revenue and the previous revenue, the same thing you will have because no cost change. Is that clear? The same thing you can calculate it in different way. Got it? I will show you how you can calculate in a different way, otherwise you will be confused. New price 1.25 million, right? Cost 800,000. Percentage not change 52.5. These are the new information, right? If you calculate the new profit according to the changes, new profit will be new revenue minus the original cost 236,250. Clear? Originally you have recognized 180,000 profit, remember. Therefore, difference will be the new profit, sorry, this minus this 56,250. Same can be calculated like this. New price 1.25 million, old price 1 million, right. Now your percentage is 52.5, previously percentage was 60%, remember. The new revenue would be this into 52.5, the old revenue was 600,000. Again you can see difference is 56,250, both same. Clear? You can calculate on both method, because cost cannot be changed in the both circumstances, only revenue will change due to the change in the price and the percentage. Therefore, the additional profit need to be recognized 56,250 for the last year, because this year beginning the percentage and the information has been changed. Due to this change, you need to recognize additional revenue 56,250. Is that clear? But you cannot adjust this into the last year as an adjustable event. You cannot. According to LKS 8, accounting policies changes in estimate and accounting error. This is an estimate. This is an estimate. Purely it is an estimate. Estimate cannot be adjusted retrospectively. You are not going to adjust for the past. You will adjust to the current and the future. It will be adjusted prospectively. Therefore, no need to correct last year profit you identified. What you need to do, recognize the change in today. This is not an adjustable event. If you want, you can disclose, but no need to adjust it. Is that clear? This is that amount. They have calculated based on the change in the revenue. Clear? So, if you want, you can calculate the profit, the same, right? Next example, look at the topic, incremental cost of obtaining a contract. Before answering this question, I will move into the standard again. Let us move into the contract cost topic. Accounting for contract cost is a separate topic in your standard. Take paragraph 160. Sorry, not 116, contract cost. Here, from the paragraph 95 onward, right? Accounting for contract cost. When you have a contract, this was tested in last time also, because with that example we discussed yesterday, last time exam paper question number 2B, they touched that contract cost also, remember. Here you have guidelines to account for contract cost. If the cost incurred in fulfilling a contract with a customer are not within the scope of another standard, you need to understand what is another standard. I will give you an example. Assume you have won a contract to construct a road, highway, assume Colombo to Kandy, you have won that contract. Now, to construct this road, you need machineries, equipment, fixed asset. For this purpose, only for this purpose, this is the first time you are going to construct a road. You know, to construct a road you need separate machineries and equipment. It is little bit different from other equipment used in other constructions. Is that clear? Therefore, you will buy specifically for this contract machineries and equipment. Those are the fixed assets you are going to use. Therefore, those should be accounted under LKS 16 property plant and equipment. Is that clear? Assume you have purchased a software to design, engineering design, right? Then it is an intangible asset. Therefore, cost you incurred on a contract can be accounted according to relevant accounting standard. But you have some cost cannot account as an asset. For an example, raw material purchased, clear, to consume for the construction. Labor cost, not only salary, all the 4 types of labor cost: short term benefits, retirement benefit, post employment benefits, then termination benefit and other long term benefit, all the employee cost, all the material cost, all overhead expenses, especially promotional expenses of that contract. For this contract, you may participate at more meetings, more conferences. Then for that activities you have cost. You have to start a project proposal from the starting point, from the project proposal point. You have cost on this contract. Clear? Some cost can be accounted as LKS 16 PPE or LKS 38 intangible asset. Clear? However, labor, material and other startup costs, promotional expenses, meeting expenses, transport expenses, you don't have a specific standard to account. That's why here they have mentioned, if the cost incurred in fulfilling the contract, underline this word, fulfilling a contract. If you incurred a cost to fulfilling a contract with a customer are not within the scope of another standard. That means LKS 2 may be raw material, or LKS 16 property plant and equipment, or LKS 38 intangible asset. Other than this cost, that is the meaning. Other than this cost. Is that clear? Just write down example here. What are the examples other than this cost? Material, labor, overhead cost, administration cost. Is that clear? Promotional expenses, contract obtaining expenses, advertisement, the 20% or 10% bribe you are giving, everything. To earn a contract from the government, sometimes you may have to give bribe, not in Sri Lanka, in other countries, right? In Sri Lanka, nobody getting any bribe, but in other countries, you have to pay bribe, 10% of the value or 20% of the value, or sometimes 100% of the value. You have to give bribe. Then all the cost other than LKS 2, LKS 16 or LKS 38 which are recognized under specific standards. Clear? An entity shall recognize an asset from the cost incurred to fulfill a contract only if those costs meet the following criteria. All the costs other than under the specific standard will be debited into separate account. Will be debited into separate account, that's called contract asset account. Write down that account called contract asset. If you have purchased raw material, it goes to inventory account. If you purchase PP, it goes to PP account. If you purchase intangible asset, it goes to intangible asset account. Other than those items incurred for the contract will be debited into common account called contract asset account. Is that clear? But you can debit into that account if following criteria are met. What is the one? The cost relate directly to the contract. That cost should be related to the contract directly. Is that clear? Number 2, the cost generate or enhance the resource of the entity that will be used in satisfying that contract obligations. And finally, costs are expected to be recovered from whom? From the customer. If you can recover the cost from customer, if that cost directly incurred to this contract, if that cost incurred to enhance the resource for this contract, you will debit those items into separate account called contract asset. Is that clear? Okay. For costs incurred in fulfilling a contract with a customer that are within the scope of another standard, an entity shall account for those costs in accordance with those other standards. Is that clear? That is LKS 16, LKS 38, LKS 2 likewise. Then what are the costs you can debit into the contract asset account? Here, costs that are related directly to the contract. These costs will debit into the contract asset. Direct labor, direct material, allocated expenses and costs that explicitly chargeable from the customer. Is that clear? These are the costs directly can be charged from the customer. Therefore, you will debit into the contract asset account. Then paragraph 98 mention cost cannot be debit into the contract asset. Write down, cost cannot be debit into the contract asset. Therefore, these contract shall be debit into profit and loss as an expense. General administration, your company having a receptionist, you are paying salary. Even you start this contract or not, you have to pay salary for the receptionist. General overhead, general administration goes to the profit and loss, your common P&L. Then wasted material you can't charge from the customer, therefore you will charge into the profit and loss. Costs that relate to satisfied performance obligation in the contract, costs that relate to satisfied performance obligation or partially satisfied performance obligation in the contract, that is costs that relate to past performance, such as correction cost. Correction cost. Assume I will conduct a one-day seminar charging 10,000 rupees from one participant. I will conduct it. But at the end of the day, I realize I did some mistakes. Right? Therefore, I need to reconduct the lecture. Right? Can I charge from you again? Can I charge from you again? Can't. You already paid and participated. But I did mistakes. Therefore, to rectify those mistakes, I have to conduct the lecture again. But I can't charge from you. But I have to conduct the lecture again, repeat it. I need to incur cost. Can I recover from you? Can't. Therefore, I have to charge those rectifying cost. Rectifying previous errors will charge into profit and loss. Correction expenses. Is that clear? For example, you will complete an external audit charging 1 million rupees from the customer, client. You will issue the audit report, but later on you realize you did a mistake in printing or typing your audit report. Therefore, customer complain you. Then you will reproduce the audit report again. But that cost can you charge from the customer, client? No. Then what you can do? You have to charge that is into profit and loss. Okay? And finally, cost for which an entity cannot distinguish whether the cost relate to this contract or not. Some cost you cannot identify directly with the contract or other, therefore you will charge into profit and loss. Is that clear? Then especially these three paragraphs are important. 92. The incremental cost of obtaining a contract. Underline this. Incremental cost of obtaining a contract. As I told you, promotion expenses, meeting expenses, traveling expenses. Sometimes you have to travel abroad to make a presentation to own the contract. You don't know whether that contract received or not, but you have to travel there. You have to make a presentation. You have to appoint expert team. You have to ask them to prepare a project proposal. Those expenses incurred due to the contract. If you are not going to bid for that, you are not going to incur those costs. If you assume you will bid for a contract next year, right, with the government, you will appoint a team. You will ask them to prepare a project proposal. You will ask them to prepare a presentation. You will ask them to travel abroad and do the presentation. Everything you will ask them. They will do. Thereafter, you will win the project. Clear? But that cost is directly attributable to the project. Is that clear? Incremental cost of obtaining a contract. Is that clear? Initial expenses of the contract are those costs that an entity incurs to obtaining a contract with a customer that it would not have incurred if the contract has not been obtained. Got it? For example, a sales commission in Sri Lanka is a sales commission, in foreign country is a 10%, 20% bribe. Is that clear? Sometimes you have to give bribes to take the bid, to win the bid, right? Cost to obtain a contract that would have been incurred regardless whether the contract was obtained shall be recognized as an expense when incurred, unless those costs are explicitly chargeable to the customer. Those expenses, traveling expenses, project proposal expenses, experts cost, everything incurred before obtaining the contract, but to obtain the contract shall be charged into profit and loss. Is that clear? It's just like a research expense, shall be charged into profit and loss. But if customer agreed to pay those, you can debit into contract asset account. Is that clear? Correct? Right. Let's see the example now. Incremental cost of obtaining a contract. XPLC win a competitive bid to provide consulting service to a new customer. XPLC incurred the following costs here to obtain the contract. Cost to obtain the contract. Clear? Commission 10,000, external legal fees for due diligence, travel cost to deliver proposal, as I told you, traveling expenses, proposal expenses, expenses paid to experts, everything. Totally 50,000 you incurred to obtaining the contract, not to fulfill the performance obligation. The commission to sales employees is incremental to obtaining the contract and should be capitalized as a contract asset. The external legal fees and travelling costs are not incremental to obtaining the contract because they have been incurred regardless whether XPLC obtaining the contract or not. A supplier may recognize the incremental cost of obtaining a contract as an expense when incurred if the amortization period of the asset that the entity otherwise would have recognized in 1 year or less. Now they have mentioned charge these commission expenses to the contract asset, charge these two expenses to the profit and loss. Why? Commission to sales employees for winning the contract. Here external legal fees for due diligence. This is travelling cost to deliver the proposal. When you deliver in the proposal, you don't know whether you receive or not. Clear? You can charge into P&L. When you getting external legal consultation for the proposal or due diligence, you don't know whether you receive the contract or not. You can charge it to P&L. But commission to sales employees for winning the contract. You have won the contract since you have paid the commission. Is that clear? Therefore, sales commission can be charged from the customer. You will debit into the contract asset. Is that clear? Then amortization of contract cost. XPLC win a 5-year contract to provide a service to a customer. The contract contains a single performance obligation satisfied over time. Company recognize revenue on a time basis. Cost incurred by the year 1 and forecast future cost are as follows. Cost to date 10,000, the estimated of future cost 18,000, altogether you have to incur 28,000. Cost must be recognized in P&L on the same basis as that used to recognize revenue. XPLC recognize revenue on a time basis, therefore 1/5 of the total expected cost should be recognized in the P&L over the time. Sometimes some cost incurred for the contract, clear, cannot be charged directly into the one financial year. Like this cost incurred up to date and the estimated future cost for the contract. 28,000 relating to the 5-year period. Clear? Therefore, what you need to do, according to the revenue you recognize over 5-year period, you have to amortize this cost into the profit and loss, otherwise you will violate matching concept. Is that clear? This example, XPLC win a contract to build an asset for a customer. It anticipated that asset will take 2 years to complete. It will take 2 years. The contract contains a single performance obligation. Progress to completion is measured on an output basis. At the end of the first year, 60% completed. Cost incurred to the contract 28,000. You completed 60% of the project at the end of the first year. Therefore, cost must be recognized in P&L on the same basis you used to recognize the revenue. Your basis to recognize revenue 60%. Therefore, 60% of this 28,000 shall be recognized in profit and loss. Therefore, cost shall be recognized in P&L according to the way you recognize revenue in the P&L. Is that clear? If it is over period straight line, cost shall be amortized on a straight line. If it is based on percentage method, cost shall be taken on the percentage method. Then contract asset account. XPLC entered into contract to construct a building for Y for 1 million to be invoiced on completion. The contract is expected to take 2 years to complete. XPLC started work on contract on the first day of the accounting period. At the end of the first year, company assessed the contract to be 60% complete. The double entry to recognize the revenue is as follows. Contract assets 600,000 because 1 million in the total price. Clear? You completed 60%. Therefore, contract asset debit 600,000, revenue credit 600,000. Is that clear? The 600,000 is not recognized as receivable because XPLC's right to consideration will not become unconditional until it has right to invoice the amount. Why? To be invoiced on completion. Is that clear? You will invoice at the end of the second year. Until you invoice, you will debit it into the contract asset. That's why that account called contract asset, not receivable. Is that clear? When this occur, the contract asset at that date would be reclassified as a receivable. Once you invoice, contract asset credit, receivable debit. Got it? If you have control until you complete the project, that is an asset for you, not to the customer. Therefore, you can't say it is a receivable. Once you transfer the control, that means once you send the invoice, raise the invoice, that means you transfer the control to the customer. Then you will take that asset balance into a receivable balance. Is that clear? The same thing, when you producing something to sell, you will put them in inventory account, not a receivable account. Once you sell it to the customer, you will put them into the receivable account from the inventory. Until you sell it, it is an asset for you. Is that clear? This is a general concept. Then the other aspects of revenue, agency expenses, agency income, right? Let's see this example. XPLC distribute good for YPLC under an agreement with the following terms. XPLC distributes goods for YPLC. Now, X is an agent for Y. Is that clear? Say X is a distributor, Y is a manufacturer. Now, X is distributing good on behalf of Y. Now, all the sales made by X, not a sale of X, it is a sale of Y. X getting a agency fee or commission. Is that clear? Therefore, any amount you collected on behalf of the principal is not your income. Correct? XPLC is given legal title to the goods by YPLC and sell them to the retailers. YPLC sets the selling price and XPLC is given a fixed margin on all sales. YPLC retains all product liability and is responsible for any manufacturing defects. XPLC has the right to return inventory to YPLC. Unsold item X will return to the Y because X is only an agent. XPLC is not responsible for any credit risk. He just distributes it. YPLC retains all significant risk and reward of ownership of the goods transferred to XPLC. Why? Even XPLC taken those goods and stored their warehouses, unsold item at the end of the period they will return. Any defect item, that responsibility will be taken by the manufacturer. Why? Therefore, X is not responsible for any defect items or any unsold item. They just distribute. Therefore, the risk and reward associate with the goods always with the Y until X is sell into a third party. Clear? Therefore, transferring good from Y to X is not a sale. Is that clear? Therefore, XPLC is acting as an agent of Y. YPLC transferred legal title of goods which had cost 1.5 million to XPLC. Can Y recognize revenue? Cannot. XPLC is to sell these goods to YPLC for YPLC at a markup of 30%. XPLC entitled for 4% on selling price. As at 31st December, XPLC has sold 80% of these goods. Now, Y send 1.5 million worth goods to X. Out of that, X sold 80% to a third party and collected all cash due but not yet remitted to Y. You received 1.5 million good as the X. Got it? You will sell by adding 30% margin. Therefore, it need to be multiplied by 130. Clear? Out of that, you sold only 80% and you collected cash. Therefore, your cash book as X debit 1.56 million. Clear? But it is not your revenue. That revenue collected on behalf of principal Y. But you entitled only for 4%. Therefore, from that revenue, your revenue will be 4%. Commission fee, agency fee. Credit your revenue account only 62,400. Balance is not your revenue, it shall be remitted to the YPLC. Therefore, liability credit the balance. Is that clear? Even though Y received this or not, it is a revenue for Y. Therefore, Y recognize their revenue. If it is not receivable, they will recognize. If it is not received, they will recognize receivable from the X. Is that clear? Therefore, the simple theory, revenue generated on behalf of a third party is not a revenue for you. Clear? It is a revenue for a principal. Only commission entitled by you is the revenue for you. Balance is a payable. Clear? Then they have mentioned they have sold only 80% of this. This is the cost of the item you got. That balance 20% is the inventory. That is not an inventory for X. It is an inventory for Y. That's called items with third parties. When YPLC auditors get in the inventory count, they won't be able to count this because this is with X stores. Clear? But it need to be added to the Y inventory. Is that clear? Then non-refundable upfront fee. Let's see what is it. X Limited operate health club. Club membership requires an upfront fee of $100 followed by a monthly membership of 50 paid at the end of the each month. හරියට ඉන්ස්ටිටියුට් එකේ එක්සෑම් වලට රෙජිස්ටර් වෙනකොට රෙජිස්ට්‍රේෂන් ෆී එක වගේ. It's just like a registration fee with the CA Sri Lanka. Once you registered as a student, that fee not taken into exam fee or any other fees. It is just registration fee, right? It is a upfront fee. Thereafter for exam and study packs you have to pay separately. In this club also same. To join with the club you have to pay 100, right? Thereafter monthly you have to pay 50. The same fees are required both new joiners and existing members. Upfront fee 100, that's a one time payment. Then monthly fee 50 for a 1 year period. Monthly fee you will be collected 600, therefore your total collection will be 700. Is that clear? Monthly plus upfront fee. Clear? Analysis. The fee does not relate to a good or service provided at the start of the contract, but rather to the delivery of service over life of the contract. The fee is part of the overall satisfaction price for 12 months of health club memberships. It should be added to the monthly fee to arrive at a transaction price, and this should be recognized on a monthly basis over 12 months in the amount like this. This is the total amount shall be collected from the customer per annum. We will divide by 12. Then monthly income will be 58.33. At the start of the contract you will receive 100, clear? You will receive 100 cash debit, contract liability credit, upfront fee. Then you will receive monthly cash 50, debit cash, correct? But revenue will be credit 58.33, but you received only 50. Balance 8.33 will be taken from the liability you recognize. Therefore, monthly income double entry will be cash debit 50, liability debit 8.33. Total will credit into the profit and loss. Is that clear? Okay. Once you receive the upfront fee, cash debit, liability credit, then you will add upfront fee plus monthly receivable and divide by 12. Then you have the total income, that is 58. It will be credited into the revenue at the end of the first year. But you receive only 50. Balance 8.33 will taken from the liability. Therefore, automatically that 100 will be amortized over the 12 months period in the profit and loss. Is that clear? Now you have an argument. This is upfront fee, not refundable. Can't be taken at the point you receive into the P&L? Answer, cannot. Why? You are getting this 100 as a joining fee by agreeing to provide the service. Is that clear? Therefore, until you satisfy the performance obligation, you cannot take this upfront fee into the P&L. That's why you add this upfront fee with the monthly fee and divide by 12 and recognize over the period. Is that clear? Let's see this example. X Limited operate a health club. Club membership require an upfront fee of 100 followed by a monthly membership fee of 50 paid at the end of the each month. Same story. Membership can be renewed at the end of each year for no further joining fee with members containing to pay the original monthly fee. Annually, they can renew the membership but no need to pay additional payment. At the joining, you have to pay 100, thereafter no need to pay annual payments, only monthly fees. X Limited determined that memberships renew their membership once on average before leaving the club. Let's see the analysis. X Limited is entering into two separate performance obligations at the start of the contract. These are the provision of monthly membership and the granting of a renewal option to the member. Is that clear? If they join, you will grant them a renewal option for the next year. Transaction price is normally allocated to each performance obligation with reference to the relative standalone selling price. However, this contract gives a customer a material right to acquire future service similar to the original service in accordance with the terms in the original contract. X Limited is allowed to allocate transaction price to the optional service by reference to those expected to be provided and corresponding expected consideration. This is upfront fee 100. This is monthly fee. They will join assume for 2 years, 24 months. Clear? Then total monthly income will be 1200. With this 100 it will be 1300. Clear? The total fee should be recognized over 24 months, therefore 1300 will be divided by 12 now. Is that clear? Then once you allow them to renew for next year, that upfront fee 100 should be recognized on not only 1 year, over 2 years. In previous case, you are not allow them to renew for the next year. Therefore, that upfront fee 100 allocated over the 12 months. Now here you will allow them to renew for the second year. Is that clear? Therefore, this 100 is eligible for 2 years. Got it? Therefore, now you will divide it by 24 months. Is that clear? Is that clear? See whether upfront fee allow customer to renew or not. If it is not renewing option, you will allocate this upfront fee over only the first 12 months. If it is allowing to next year, you have to allocate over 24 months. If it is allowing for 3 years, you have to allocate over 3 years. If that 100 payment allowing to join with 5-year period, you have to allocate over 5 years. Is that clear? Right. Now let us move into the practical questions tested in ACCA papers. Example number 1. Have you taken this first example? No. Yesterday? No. Right. Fixkerton has entered into a sale contract to construct of an asset with a customer, whereby customer pays an initial deposit. Is that clear? The deposit is refundable only if Fixkerton fails to complete the construction of the asset. If you fail to complete the obligation, you need to refund it. Clear? The balance will payable on the delivery of the asset. If the customer defaults on the contract prior to completion, company has right to retain the deposit. Is that clear? Now assume I will enter into a contract with you to construct something for over 2 years. You will pay advance today. I will construct it and deliver to you at the end of the second year. If I fail to deliver, I need to refund my advance to you. If you fail to pay the balance, I will retain the refund fund with, initial fund with me. Is that clear? The managing director believes that as completion of the asset is performed over time, revenue should be recognized accordingly. Now, managing director decided to recognize revenue over the period, not on a point in time. Is that clear? Managing director supposed to recognize revenue over period. He has persuaded the accountant to include deposit and a percentage of remaining balance for construction work in revenue to date. Now, managing director's idea is to recognize revenue on the percentage base, progress base. Can they do that? Can't. Why? The risk and reward of the constructed asset or agreed asset will not transfer until you complete the product, or until customer pay the full, because if customer defaulted, you will keep the advance fund with you. That means until customer pay full amount, risk and reward not transferred to the customer. If customer default, you will keep the asset with you. Am I correct? That means risk and reward that the control will transfer over the time or at a point. Is that clear? Therefore, revenue cannot be recognized over period. Since company can retain the asset and the advance fund if customer default. Therefore, if until customer pay the full amount, control with you. Therefore, revenue can be recognized at the point you complete and hand over the asset to the customer after getting the full fund from the customer. Therefore, revenue cannot be recognized over period, since the control transfer at the end of the period when customer made the full payment. That would be the answer. Is that clear? Why you will tell like this? Because if customer default, you will retain the asset and you are not refund the advance. That means until customer made the full payment, control with you. Is that clear? Therefore, what you need to do for the advance? Yesterday I told you. It shall be recognized as a contract liability. Is that clear? Okay. Then let us take this example. This is a nice example covering many areas of the standard. Carsoon construct a retail vehicle outlet and entered into contract with customers to construct buildings on their land. Carsoon construct retail vehicle outlets and entered into a contract with customers to construct building on their land. The contracts have standard terms which include penalties payable by Carsoon if the contract is delayed. Clear? Or payable by customer if Carsoon cannot gain access to the construction site. Based on those information, tell me how they satisfy the performance obligation over period or on a point in a time. On a point in time. How? Read the first paragraph again and tell me how they satisfy the performance obligation at a point or over period. Do they mention they are transferring over period? No. They didn't mention they are transferring the control over period. If not transferring control over period, definitely it will be transferred at the project end. Is that clear? Okay, let us see. Here there is a special clause. If you delay the project, you will pay penalty to the customer. If you not gain access to the site due to outside issues, not your own issues, customer will pay penalty to you. Is that clear? Due to poor weather, one of the project was delayed. Is it your fault or outside issue? Outside issue. According to the contract, you are entitled to getting penalty. Now, you did not access to the site due to the outside issue. As a result, Carsoon face additional cost and contractual penalties. As Carsoon could not gain access to the construction site, the directors decided to make a counterclaim against the customer for the penalties and additional cost which Carsoon faced. Carsoon felt that because claim had been against the customer, the additional cost and penalty should not be included in the contract cost, but shown as a contingent liability. Carsoon has assessed the legal basis of the claim and feels it has enforceable right, because there is a clause. If you not get the access, you can claim it from the customer. Clear? Therefore, company feels they can take that penalty, but they didn't mention as the customer approved it or not yet. Any increase in price, any modification of the contract need to be approved by both parties. Is that clear? Just you only decided to claim from the customer, but customer not yet accepted it. Is that clear? In the year ended 28 February 17, Carsoon incurred general and administration cost 10 million and waste material 5 million. You know directly it goes to profit and loss according to the contract cost. Additionally, during the year, Carsoon agreed to construct a storage facility. Clear? Now you already agreed to construct retail outlet. In addition to that, you agreed to construct storage facility. For that, you will charge separate price 7 million, and separately you incur cost 5 million. Is that clear? This also a contract modification, but in this case both scope and price will change. Clear? The parties agreed to modify the contract. In this case, clearly mentioned both parties agreed to modify the contract, include the construction of storage facility which was completed during the current financial year. All of the additional costs relating to the above were capitalized as asset in the financial statement. How you have to account according to SLFRS 15. Originally you agreed to construct retail outlet. After few months you decided to charge additional penalty from the customer. That is, your price will increase more than you originally agreed due to the penalty you charge. Since price change, it is a contract modification, but it not yet approved. Is that clear? Thereafter, you incur administration and waste material cost. Again, you have agreed to construct storage facility under additional price and cost. You have two contract modifications here. Is that clear? Second contract modification, that is agreement to construct a storage facility, already both parties agreed, and both scope and price will change. Therefore, no issue. This storage facility can be accounted as a separate contract without incorporate into the original contract. Why? You have a standalone price and distinct good to be transferred in addition to the original. Clear? Therefore, this storage facility shall be recognized as a separate contract. But in this case, penalty issue is a contract modification, but not yet approved by the customer. If customer not approved, you cannot recognize this amount you paid already, right, as a contingent liability, because until both parties agreed the modification, you have to account in the same contract. Is that clear? Now let us see the answer. See, now what is the paragraph you need to refer? Paragraph 18 and 20. Paragraph 18 explain what is a contract modification. Contract modification is a change in price or scope for both, but that modification need to be approved by both parties in oral, writing, or in writing, or orally, or in a acceptable business method. Both parties need to agree. Therefore, you have to write down according to SLFRS 15, paragraph 18. Thereafter, you have to say paragraph 20 also. What is paragraph 20? The modification can be considered as a separate contract if both following conditions satisfied. Right? Once you write down these two paragraphs, you can start to analyze your case. Right? Now let us see what they mention about the penalty. The penalty and additional cost attributable to the contract should be considered when they occur, and CASUN should have include them in the total cost of the contract in the period in which they have been notified. As regard the counterclaim for compensation, CASUN account for the claim as a contract modification in accordance with 15. The modification does not result in any additional good or service being provided to the customer. In addition, all of the remaining good and service after the modification are not distinct as form part of the single performance obligation. Consequently, CASUN should account for the modification by updating the transaction price and the measurement of the progress toward complete satisfaction of the performance obligation. Clear? That is the basic requirement. The additional penalty charge not deliver additional good to the customer. It is just increase the price. Therefore, it is the modification change in the original contract. That is okay. And additionally, you have to include, however, that claim not approved by the customer. Is that clear? Therefore, until customer approving it, you cannot record it in the books of accounts, right? Then a contract modification may exist even though parties to the contract have a dispute about the scope and price. That is paragraph 90. Clear? The same thing they have copied and paste. Of the modification of the parties have approved a change in the scope of the contract but have not yet determined the corresponding change in the price. In determining whether rights and obligations which are created or charged by a modification are impossible, the entity should consider all relevant facts and circumstances, including the terms of the contract and other evidence. On the basis of the information available, it is possible to feel that the counterclaim had not reached an advanced stage, so that claim submitted to the client could not be included in the total revenue because both parties not approved it. Clear? When the contract modification for a construction of storage facility, an additional 7 million is added to the consideration which CASUN will receive. The additional 7 million reflect standalone selling price of the contract modification. The construction of separate storage facility is a distinct performance obligation. The contract modification for the additional storage facility would be in effect new contract, which does not affect the accounting for existing contract. Is that clear? And finally, general administration and waste material cannot capitalize, that should be expense. Is that clear? This is the example we have discussed yesterday. This example also same. Can you remember that 1.5 million thereafter increased by 250,000? Once you recognize revenue on the progress, subsequently percentage was changed. We have discussed that example. It was tested in ACCA paper also. Clear? These examples we discussed. This is a theoretical question. I am not going to discuss this theory question because discuss the criteria which must be met for a contract with the customer, that is paragraph 9, 5 points. Clear? Discuss the criteria which must be met for a contract with the customer, that is paragraph 9. Okay? Then discuss the 4 remaining steps which lead to a revenue recognition 5-step model. Discuss the balance 4 methods. Right? Just see those things. Let us see this example. Bloschberger is a manufacturer of consumer goods. On 30th November 17, company entered into 1-year contract to sell good to a large global chain of retail stores. The customer committed to buy at least $30 million of product over 1-year contract. Is that clear? Now they are contract to buy 30 million worth goods within 1 year. The contract required company to make non-refundable payment of 3 million. Can you immediately see paragraph 48 last point? What is paragraph 48? Different type of prices. Remember, paragraph 48 of this standard, and the last point, you have 5 points, 5 types of prices. Clear? What is the last point? Last or one before last? Consideration payable to customer. Do you have such a point? One before last. Last. Point A, B, C, D, E. Point E. Consideration payable to customer. දැන් මේ ඉන්නවනේ පුතේ. මුදලාලි කස්ටමර්ට ගාණක් දීලා කරන බිස්නස් තියෙනවනේ. තියෙනවද? මුදලාලි කස්ටමර්ට ගාණක් දෙන බිස්නස් තියෙනවා. Clear? ඒ වගේ එකක්. Consideration payable to customer. Clear? Now we are going to learn how to apply that sentence. Okay. Consideration payable to customer. Now customer agreed to buy how much? 30 million worth goods from you within 1 year. According to the agreement, company to make a non-refundable payment of 3 million to the customer. Finally, at the end, your net income will be 27 million because you have paid 3 million at the beginning. Clear? At the inception of the contract, the 3 million payment is to compensate the customer for the change required to its shelving to accommodate company's product. Company duly paid 3 million to the customer on the beginning. In December 17, company transferred good to the customer worth 4 million to the customer and invoice them for the amount. December 17 means the first financial year end. Clear? You entered into the contract first 30th November. You entered into the contract on 30th November. First financial year ended within 1 month. When you entered, you paid 3 million to the customer. Then from that day onward, over 12 months, you will deliver 30 million worth goods. But end of the first financial year, within 1 month, you delivered only 4 million. Now how you will recognize the revenue? See the paragraph 48 E. Given you reference to paragraph 70 to 72. Now please read 70 to 72. Suraj. Right, paragraph 70 to 72. Consideration payable to customer. දැන් මොනවා වුණත් මේක විභාගෙට ලියන්න එපානේ paragraph එකේ advice එක before make the calculation. දැන් ගිහිල්ලා එකපාරට ගාන හදලා පෙන්නන්න එපා. හරිද? ඒක වැදගත්. මොකද in the syllabus 2015 syllabus it was prepared based on the Bloom's taxonomy. What is Bloom taxonomy? The learning process classified into 5 stages by the Bloom's. First stage knowledge, second stage comprehension, then application, then analysis, then synthesis. The knowledge කියන්නේ fundamental level, basic level. ඒකෙදි කරන්නේ recall the knowledge. Clear? Recall knowledge කියන්නේ what you cram you have to rewrite again in the answer script. Application කියන්නේ what you have learned you have to apply into a real world scenario. Now this is a real world scenario. Examiner directly not ask state or compute. They will ask you to discuss, advise, explain. Then you cannot do just calculation, right? You have to advise first. Then you can show the calculation according to your advice. Therefore, you have to refer the paragraph basically. Not the paragraph number, the points. Now here consideration payable to customer. What they have mentioned? Consideration payable to customer include cash amount that an entity pays or expect to pay to the customer as the 3 million. Clear? Right? Now think with the example, right? Consideration payable to customer also include credit or other items. For example, a coupon or voucher that can be applied against the amount owed to the entity. An entity shall account for consideration payable to customer as a reduction of the transaction price. Underline. That is the point you need to highlight. An entity shall account for the consideration payable to customer as a reduction of the transaction price or revenue unless the payment to customer is in exchange for a distinct good or service. Is that clear? That's why I told you your net revenue will be 27. Paragraph 71. If consideration payable to a customer is a payment for a distinct good or service from the customer, then an entity shall here. If consideration payable to a customer is a payment for a distinct good or service, in this case it's the same, right? Entity shall account for the purchase of good or service in the same way that it account for the other purchase from the suppliers. If the amount of consideration payable to a customer exceed the fair value of the distinct good or service that the entity received from the customer, then the entity shall account for such an excess as a reduction of the transaction price. I will give you an example for this. I will ask you to construct a house in my land, right? I will tell you, however, you should buy all raw material from my shop. I am a hardware owner. Clear? Hardware owner. I want to construct my house through you. You are going to construct the house, but you shall purchase raw material from my hardware. Is that clear? At that point, you have a consideration paid to the customer. Agreed? Then I will deliver the goods for that. Assume the consideration you pay for me and the item I transfer to you has a different value. Goods you received has a separate fair value. The consideration is a separate value. Assume you have paid more than the goods. Then you have paid excess. That excess will be deducted from the price. Is that clear? If you just transfer consideration without any goods back to you, entire value will be deducted from the price, as we reduce 3 million from the 30 million. Clear? But if you receive something from me for the 3 million you transfer me, you have an excess payment that will be reduced from the price. Got it? Right. Now let's see the answer. Here they have here paragraph 48, everything they have referred, right? I am not going to refer those things. The 3 million compensation payable by company should not be recorded as a separate reduction in the transaction price until company recognize revenue from the sales of good. Therefore, 30th November, first day, they have paid 3 million to the customer. When they pay, contract asset debit, cash credit. You paid for them, contract asset debit, cash credit 3 million. Then the compensation amount to 10%, because you pay 3 million, your price is 30 million. Therefore, the amount you payable to the customer is 10% from your price. Is that clear? Right. Of the contract price. Consequently, company transferred good to the customer, the transaction price must be reduced by 10%. Therefore, end of December, end of the first financial year, company should recognize revenue 3.4. Why? The consideration you paid to customer 10%. Is that clear? You recognize it as a contract asset debit cash credit, and you decide it was 10% on the total selling price. Now, end of the first financial year, you considered 4 million revenue, because you satisfied 4 million worth performance obligation, but your revenue should be only 90% on that. Is that clear? Because overall price 30 million, you paid 3 million. Therefore, consideration paid to customer is 10% of the total price. Agreed? Therefore, whatever the revenue you recognize thereafter, your revenue would be 90%. Is that clear? Now, end of the first financial year, end of the December, how much the revenue you have? How much the revenue you rendered? 4 million. But you can recognize only 90%. 4 million, 90% means 3.6. Here, receivable debit 4 million, but your revenue credit 90% on that 3.6. Balance 4 million will be credited from this contract. 0.4 million will be credited from this contract asset. Assume thereafter you delivered 10 million worth service. How much the revenue? 9 million. 1 million debit in credit into the asset. Very simple. Is that clear? Once you paid to the customer, recognize a contract asset. Clear? Then calculate the percentage on the total price. Thereafter, from each invoice, you have to allocate that percentage into the contract asset. Balance will credit into the P&L. Is that clear? Then what happened finally? That contract asset will be amortized over the period. Is that clear? That's how you have to account consideration paid to the customer. Simply you can summarize like this. Write down with the point E of paragraph 48. What you can write down? Paragraph 48E. The consideration shall be reduced from the sales price. Consideration shall be reduced from the sales price. Thereafter, the percentage of the consideration paid on the total price. Agreed? The percentage of the consideration paid on the total price. In our case, how much? 10%. The percentage of the consideration paid on the total price. Shall be amortized against the contract asset, because once you paid the consideration, you have a contract asset, right? Shall be amortized against the contract asset without recognizing revenue. Therefore, you can write down the double entry like this. You need to write down two double entries. Number 1, consideration paid, contract asset debit, cash credit. Number 1 transaction, contract asset debit, cash credit, that the consideration paid. Clear? Number 2, revenue recognition. Number 2, revenue recognition. Receivable debit, okay, receivable debit, credit contract asset within bracket, what? The percentage already paid. Clear? The percentage already paid. Balance P&L credit as revenue. Is that okay? Next example. On 1st July 17, please try to take this information into a timeline, then you can easily understand. 1st July 17, company entered into a contract with customer to sell product A for $2,000 per unit. If the customer purchased more than 1,000 units of product A in a 12 months period, contract specified that price per unit is retrospectively reduced. Go back to and adjust. Retrospectively reduced into 180. What is the originally agreed price? 200. However, if customer buy more than 1,000, price will be reduced retrospectively 180. Got it? Okay. Now take the timeline. 1st September 17. 1st September 17 means first quarter end. You entered on 1st July. July, August, September. First quarter end. Can I take into the board? Suraj. You entered into the contract 1st July. If customer bought 1,000 or more, price will be 180, but agreed price 200. Clear? Now question mentioned at the end of the first quarter. At the end of the first quarter, company sold 75 units. Only 75 units. To complete the year, you have another 3 quarters. Now in the first quarter, you sold only 75. Therefore, can you assume they will buy 1,000 units? What is the original agreement? To sell 1 unit at 200. But you told them if you buy more than 1,000, you will reduce the price to 180 retrospectively. At the end of the first quarter, how much they bought? How much you sold? 75. Now based on this quantity, can you say, will they buy 1,000 no more? No, per quarter 75, then per annum how much? Maximum 300. Therefore, there is no probability of buying 1,000 no more. Is that clear? Therefore, you can conclude that no probability of buying 1,000. Clear? Therefore, for this quarter, you will recognize revenue, debit cash, credit P&L, 75 units into $200. Clear? Because no probability of buying 1,000, since they have bought only 75 units per quarter. Is that clear? Therefore, you will consider the original price agreed, no reduction. Got it? Then question said, I will read it for you. In October 18, October means the first quarter ended 30th September, then October end, the customer acquired another company and in the quarter ended 31st December, that is second quarter end. second quarter end, company sold 5,000 units of product A to the customer. In light of this, company now estimated that customers' purchase will exceed 1,000 unit threshold, and therefore it will be required to retrospectively reduce the price into 180. During the second quarter, they have bought 500 units. Now, how many units they have bought over the 2 quarters? 575. Therefore, what would be the estimated purchase for the year? 1,150. Is that clear? Now you can estimate, and now you can say there is a probability of buying more than 1,000. Now you need to fulfill your agreement. What is your agreement? To reduce the price into 180. Is that clear? Therefore, in this period, you need to take reduced price, that is 180. But you agreed to retrospectively adjust. How? Look here. This 500 units should be multiplied by $180, no doubt. Is that clear? Got it? Tell me the total. How much? $90,000? The total? Why we have taken 180? Because now there is a probability of buying more than 1,000, since they have purchased altogether 575 for the first half. Clear? Therefore, it should be sold at 180. Therefore, value would be 90,000. Got it? But this 75 was sold at 200. That means for this 25 you have been charged more $20 more. Is that clear? Can you repay to them? You can't repay, but you can reduce it from this price. Therefore, adjustment, retrospective adjustment. Last quarter you have sold 75 units and you have charged 200, but now you need to reduce it also into 180. Therefore, you need to reduce their revenue by $20. Is that clear? Therefore, last quarter you overcharge $150. Is that clear? Sorry, $1,500. $1,500 you overcharge. Therefore, this quarter revenue you will reduce $1,500. Then you have $88,500. For this quarter, double entry will be debit cash 88,500, credit P&L 88,500. The overcharge amount in last quarter has been reduced from this quarter price. Is that clear? Assume at the end of the third quarter, assume, right? Customer will bankrupt. They only bought 100 unit here, assume, and he was bankrupt. Now there is a probability of, he is going to be bankrupt, right? Is there a probability of getting 1,000? No. Then what you have to do? Multiply this by 200 again, right? Then multiply this by 20. Multiply this by 20 and add to this price and charge the amount, because you are retrospectively adjusting. Is that clear? This call paragraph 48, what? Variable consideration. You are varying the consideration. Is that clear? You vary in the consideration time to time. You are not getting fixed consideration from the customer. Okay, right. I think now is the time to wind up the session. I have discussed major examples can be tested in the exam, but this is not enough to complete. To have a complete understanding of SLFRS 16, 9 and 15, what you need to do, I will tell you. I will now adjust these questions also and incorporate the answer to these sheets. then I will send it to the examination division to upload into the LMS, CS Sri Lanka LMS. Then you can download this, right? Before the exam, please practice those 3 documents again and again. Clear? Now there are some questions without answers. I will incorporate that answers also. Then I will send it to the examination division to upload. Then you can take 15, 9 and 16 worksheets we discussed here, right? And you can track these examples from ACCA study pack for strategic business reporting, right? That subject is strategic business reporting. Take the study pack from the website. These questions are available. Take a revision kit for that subject in ACCA website, right? Practice those questions. Then download strategic business reporting past papers. Only for 2018 and 19 you have past papers because that syllabus was changed beginning 2018. Download those past papers and see the answers and questions. Download the revision kit for that and see the answers and questions. Download the study text, see the answers and questions. Then you can have comprehensive understanding. In addition to that, just type on the Google IFRS 15 or 9 or 16 using Ernst and Young or PwC or KPMG or Deloitte or BDO. Those 5 are international audit firms. The international bodies publish practice questions and example as a separate discussion sheets. It is available in the website. You can just type and download those documents from EY International, BDO International, Deloitte International, KPMG International, PwC International. Download those documents. They have more examples and answers. Read those things. Because I believe this time you may have more than 25 marks, more than 30 marks from these 3 standards. What are the standards? SLFRS 15, 16 and 9. Right? Then let's wind up the session. I wish you all the best for this exam. Don't keep these subjects for the next year. Try to become a chartered accountant within next year. All the best. Well, thank you very much.